I study horses, beauty matched only by their strength. I try and capture a little of that as I move on without your face. I study horses, my picture of living zen. You see the men line up to tame the beast, but it's the horse that will tame them.
First steps. You see a lot in the first steps. Got to look at his attitude, which side of the bed he woke up on. Zorro's a really good boy. When my daughter used to come with me out to the barn when she was little, I had to make sure she stayed safe, so I used to tell her the best way to be around horses is to just stay a little mad all the time so that they wouldn't push you around. Holy cow, she looked just pissed off all the time. It was hilarious. She did it to the 10th power when she stayed safe. But I think the best way actually to be around horses is a little flirty. Flirty but firm. And even if you have to be firm, then you still be flirty. And I think that helps your heart stay open. Also, a big sense of humor, because you know horses have a big sense of humor. All right. You look pretty good walking up. Got a hoof test when you start, just so if there's any problem spots, you already know what you're dealing with. Looks good. It's got a thick sole, concave. It's deeper in the heels than at the toe. It indicates a positive palmar angle. Looks good. It's nice to pull those nails individually if you can. It's less torque on their foot and less possibility of ripping hoof wall off. Looks good. First impressions are really important. Got beautiful concavity, got a little deeper on the medial, which indicate higher on the inside. We never take their feet. We never pick up feet. We just ask them to pick it up for us. Good job, bud. Whatever you need. The thing about Zorro is he's nervous. He doesn't like it. But he's here and he's trying for us. Whatever you need. This foot's a little wider than the other foot, a little lower heeled. Right hind, pretty normal pattern. Good job, Zorro. Weak left hind, overloaded right hind. This stock that I built these shoes out of is 7/8 flat. Called a 3/4 fuller shoe, which I kind of like for dressage. It's just a big platform, basically. And being a flat bar of steel, it kind of starts out as a blank slate. So I can do whatever I want with it, kind of make the nail holes finer or coarser. Whereas with the concave, the nail holes are fairly set in place where they're going to go. However, it doesn't have as much traction as concave, which can be a benefit or a negative, depending on what you want. Good job. Got my handy Balata Top Sharp Rasp. These are the best ones I've found for myself. Most consistent. lasts the longest. I do a lot of rasping. All right, 3 1/8 inches for a pony. That's a pretty good measurement. Start with the top, go to the bottom, because we want to preserve all that sole depth. It's so good, bud. Big feet for a pony. The goal with the trim, of course, is to preserve that proper sole depth. So I start from the top. And then take only barely what's needed at the bottom. 5 1/2. 2 1/4. Taking all my measurements to build the shoe and also to compare the feet to each other. 15 1/4. That's a big foot for a little pony. 51 degrees. Part of the trim is how everything relates to each other. So it's important to have all 4 feet bare, trim all 4 feet, see how they relate. The goal, of course, is to end up with as big a foot as is appropriate. So a lot of times we're pulling this toe back. We end up with a shorter, more upright toe, but a bigger foot because of the volume, the depth. And that big foot makes a big difference. Basically, what we end up with is more foot under their leg instead of forward of their leg, which ends up, in theory, meaning tendons, ligaments all have to do less work. Use the height of the frog as the guide for the heels. It's a very consistent landmark for heel height. And because he's been wearing a pad, he's got plenty of heel height, which is gorgeous. We use the texture of the sole as our guide for toe depth. It's got to be pretty. .51, perfect. 5 3/8 plus 2 1/8. Planning for those clips to go right here behind the toe quarters. Making my own shoes, I can do that easily. That says 15. The other one was 15 1/4, so I might double check that. Got a beautiful thick sole that I'll exfoliate minimally. Looks gorgeous. Right front, of course, is most common high-heeled foot. So it makes sense for it to be a little narrower and a little smaller in terms of perimeter. Let's double check. Oh yeah, 15 looks fine. Okay. See how the measurements make me double check? Same width. We got symmetry. Yay. I'm gonna grab my iPad, get these measurements entered here real quick. All right, we've been taking notes on the iPad with a form that we created. It's been really helpful because we can go back at the moment and look at our old measurements, which means we can track changes. Also, we can send these notes on to the client so everybody's on the same page. They can see what we've done, what our comments or concerns are. And that has been really well received and really good for us to all be on the same page. Most of the clients love getting them, and then a couple times, quite a few times, we've been we've brought up things that they didn't realize were going on. This is great. I've been shoeing Zorro for quite a while, so to see his feet be fairly symmetrical is the goal. And why would we want feet to be symmetrical? It's because we want them to be able to hold their spine straight. When the feet are symmetrical, that symmetry translates to the upper body, and therefore how they hold their shoulders and their hips and pelvis. And if everything can, in theory, be straight, the spine will be straight, which makes it easier to engage the hind end and come up and round and through, which is every horse's goal, right? Symmetry also indicates evenly distributed weight and concussion. And of course, lameness happens when it's unevenly distributed. My boy, this was the foot that was high on the inside. So I'm looking at those heel heights to be relatively the same, not necessarily perpendicular to the leg, but the same from heel buttress to bulb. And then the concavity, of course, to be the same depth on either side. Rocker toe. Beautiful. Only reason to clean up the frog is to reduce the pressure on it or for hygiene's sake. And in this case, it's hygiene because we're going to put a pad on. But the frog has an important job to do. We've got to let it do its job by not cutting it away. 1 3/4, 5 even. Let's get that perimeter. Should be a 1/2 inch less than the front. 14.5 is a little big. And 52 degrees, slightly steeper than the fronts, which is exactly what we want. The same or slightly steeper. 14.5 looks like it might be all right. There's so many good shoes out there today that it'd be pretty easy to fit this guy with a keg shoe. However, of course I'm not going to. I'll do it the hard way, make him a nice shoe out of 7/8 flat. By taking that hoof wall off at a 90-degree angle from the top first, we're maintaining a lot of strength and integrity in that hoof wall, not thinning it out and encouraging it to bend more. It's important to remember the patterns of the foot. Helps you develop the plan, the goals, the objective to trim. Height of the frog. What makes the difference between a really good horseshoer and someone that's still learning is knowing where you are in the foot in relationship to the bones and the structures inside, how much room you have, how to manipulate to meet your objective, the things you can change aggressively and the things you should change subtly. And I would say definitely the biggest difference between an inexperienced person and a more experienced person is that the more experienced person does subtle changes. 5 1/4, 1 3/4. If I say it out loud, I remember it a whole lot better. So it's the low foot, but it's also all the measurements make sense. 14.5. So we're more symmetrical in front than behind. Get these entered and go see what shoes we need to make here. The reason to measure is to have an objective eye. So our own eye is subjective. So we measure for the same reason that like a pro athlete might watch a video of themselves and their performance, you know? They want to look at it from the outside, see what it looks like. Because when you're in it, you're not always conscious of the things that you're doing, and we as shoers are really guilty of that, doing unconscious moves, which usually means taking too much foot. So measuring is a way of becoming more conscious of what we're doing, in essence, because we can objectively compare the results of our trim. These actually look pretty good. I think we're actually in pretty good shape here to reset, so we'll reset. Might change my mind on that. Definitely reset the fronts. See what these hinds look like. Measure that perimeter, see what it compares to from last time, 14 inches. So it's a little short. 15 inches. Ooh, so we'll definitely make new hinds, bigger ones. So I just used my measurements to double check my trim and my strategy and my objectives and how well I've met my objectives. There's a 1 inch difference between the front perimeter and the hind perimeter, and that's generally too much. That means one's either big or one's either small, and it looks like the hinds are small. And we don't want Zorro to have small hinds. All right, 14.5 inches minus 2 1/4 inches is 12 1/4. This is 7/8 flat bar. 7/8 by 5/16 thick. Makes a great dressage shoe. It's light, a little lighter than 3/8 thick. Nice and wide, big platform for them to work off. Makes a beautiful shoe. All right. I do like those clips to go in the right behind the toe quarter, so that's another nice part of making shoes, is I can put the clips where I think they should go. All right, we use all our measurements, 12 1/4, center mark, 1/8 offset. First nails at 1 3/4, lateral. What we do with the shoe is only what we can't do with the trim. Mark it. This is concave bar stock from England, Billy Carruthers. I love it. It's the best stuff ever. Makes a great shoe in almost all circumstances. So I use a lot of that. Allison Bircher, are you paying attention? Okay, we're hot now. Okay, now we're going. Perfect. Got my rocker toe. I'll go burn it on. People ask us shoers all the time, do you burn yourself ever? Do you cut yourself ever? And the answer is every day. Amazing they let us do that to them, isn't it? If you don't know about shoeing, burning doesn't hurt them if you trim right. If you trim them too short, it hurts. That's why the trim's so important. But if you trim them right, burning doesn't hurt at all. And most of us shoers have learned that the hard way. Zorro has plenty of hoof mass, plenty of hoof volume. In theory, lots of room for all his internal structures to work really efficiently. So, I take full credit for all her wins. I'm just kidding. These riders, like Alyssa, can make just about any horse look good. So our job as shoers is really to stay out of the way. All right. If I do this right, I should be able to build this shoe in 3 heats, including clips. Toe bend right between my nail marks. Heel check. Kind of hem and set the toe at the same time. Quarter bend. Puller. I'm picturing that white line while I'm fullering. And swinging hard because we only have so much time. Nail holes. Pitched, Pritchel, Pritchel needs to be rebuilt. Finish the toe. Finish the nail hole, or quarter bend. Seat out the toe. I'm getting through this in 3 heats and my shoe's not even hot. This is just an orange heat. If it were yellow, I could get even more done. Safe it, medial branch. Might as well, right? Because I remember his foot, I know my nails are in good spots with his white line. We're in good shape here. We're in pretty good shape. We're almost there. Check width. Is that 5? This is right. It's 5 1/8 plus, so we're a little narrow. There we go. You can go slow and swing hard at the same time. You don't have to go fast and swing hard. Because you don't want to swing hard and miss. Ready for clips, but we'll see what we can do here. Clear your mind, Zen thoughts. See if you can hit the same place twice. One down. Two down. Nice job. Come forward for me, big guy. Make sure my center mark's lined up. Personally, I think it's important to fit the shoe a little bit bigger than the foot. Sometimes a lot bigger, depending on how far forward the capsule is, but the extra size of the shoe accommodates for the weight of the rider, and a lot of times the discipline. Okay. Looks really good. Learn from the burn. You can see the burn mark, so it helps check my fit without so many trips back and forth to the horse. All right, we'll go check them and get these pads applied. Open lateral. There we go. That one fits. If I make those clips right, there shouldn't be a whole lot of rasping. All right. I do have to say that one of the reasons for making shoes, above carrying keg shoes, is that out of this one bar, or these couple different dimensions of steel, I have every size, every shoe, fairly pretty much any shoe you could want on a regular basis. There's only a few very specialty shoes that I can't make. with this stock. So all I have to carry is the one bar and I have all the sizes, so I'm fully prepared in general for my day. And that is something you can't accomplish with keg shoes, unless you want to carry a whole bunch. And since 90% of corrective shoeing is just correct shoeing, with just the trim and a normal shoe, you can do a lot of good and don't need a whole lot else. So basically, the simplest way to accomplish our goals with the horse is the one we should use. So in my experience, what I found is generally the simplest is through the trim and basic shoe and then potentially a pad. And once you've accomplished the volume, depth, toe length breakover that you want with those things, it generally doesn't need to be a whole lot more complex than that. In other words, the trim over time takes the place of a lot of complicated shoeing. It replaces it by just allowing the foot to do its job. So basically, it's really fairly easy to make a therapeutic shoe. And the most common ones are egg bars and straight bars, of course. It's not a whole lot more steps than just making a normal shoe. But I tell you, I have hardly any horses with therapeutic shoes on because it just takes basic shoeing to do sound work most of the time. Zorro is a good example of a horse that grows out as opposed to down. He grows out almost more than he grows down, so that's why the pad is basically the insides of his foot pushed down and out rather than through the bottom of his foot, rather than his hoof wall being strong enough to grow down. The hoof wall is pushed outwards instead of downwards, so horizontally instead of vertically. I'll start here. I didn't exfoliate him yet, but as you can see, he's got beautiful, thick, strong sole. It's concave. I'll clean up that frog just for hygiene's sake. I cannot stress enough, the trim is the most important part of this, and it interesting part is how much everyone's fascinated with blacksmithing, which is understandable because it's really fun and it really looks cool. But as far as horseshoeing, the trim is what we have to focus on if we want to do the best by the horse. As I tell you what, I can put an ugly shoe on a good trim and still have a really well-moving horse, but if I put a beautiful shoe on a bad trim, still be lame. It's so good. Oh, try it. It's so good. Man, look at all that beautiful thick sole. So pretty. No need to take it all out though. It's so good. Good job, buddy. The thickness is more important than the concavity, so if you don't have it to exfoliate, don't exfoliate it. Leave it flat. But if you do, I think the mechanics of the concavity are important on the internal structures. And having a thick sole that can be concave should always be the objective. Good job, buddy. Okay, time to clinch. I recently got 2 copies of the Practical Horseshoer from the late 1890s. And I got them they were given to me by Mark Pickerel, who used to be in the grunge band, the Screaming Trees, from Ellensburg, Washington. Him and my wife are good high school friends from back in the day. And Mark collects all things Americana and sells them. And it's really interesting because in the book they talk about the origins of horseshoeing. And for a long time it sounds like we were scared to permeate or puncture the hoof wall with anything. We didn't know anything about the anatomy, so we were scared to do it. So we created shoes because it sounds like basically immediately became apparent that the horses needed shoes if they were to be domesticated, which is really interesting in the shoe versus barefoot debate. But apparently we started by tying basically sandals onto them, like around their, we'd tie them to the hoof or strap them to the hoof in pastern. And they started off grass and then leather and then quickly became metal. It sounds like at one time they were kind of a grass basket in a sense, and they wore out so quickly that the peasants would make them and have boot stations along the road, along any route, kind of like gas stations for cars, so that a horse would travel along and just get new boots along the way. And then eventually it sounds like we figured out that we could actually put something through the external hoof wall and have it be okay. So then we began nailing. All right. This is Equipack packing, which is my preference, made by Vet Tech. And just because it goes in as a liquid after the fact, and it fills all the voids and distributes that pressure really nicely. And this pad material is called soft. It's about the firmest that I use. The horses don't seem to mind firm. In fact, a lot of times they like firm more than soft. But all that, of course, goes back to depending on the thickness of the sole and the concavity. The thinner the sole, the flatter the concavity, the less they like the support of the packing. And that is a really important thing to remember. If a horse doesn't like to have packing because it's too sensitive, it always means the sole is too thin and the concavity is too shallow. And it might take a while to get them out of that sensitivity. But if you do, the overall structure will benefit greatly. And they'll be able to take the pressure of a pad. In fact, the support and pressure of a pad will be massively beneficial. I know, I gotcha. job, Big Z. So good. There we go. Ready, my friend? Okay, we'll go take Zorro home. Looks like he's walking pretty comfortably. Sharp corners kind of help see where if there's problems. Looks pretty good.
I study horses, beauty matched only by their strength.
He's a little nervous. Don't worry about it. We got you, Rose. Rosie. Allison, sing that song you always sing. It's so pretty and the horses always calm down.
I know. It's only in horse frequency though. You can't hear it. I'm doing it right now.
Oh, that's why he's so much more calm.
Yeah.
We come take measurements, Allison? Man, it sure is nice having the iPad instead of that old paper we used to use. It's so outdated and overrated.
Overrated.
Of a world we were building but now does not exist. I passed the old